There's something people won't tell you about intelligence. The smarter you are, the lonelier you become. Not because you're difficult, not because you're arrogant, but because of something far more fundamental. Something that Arthur Schopenhauer spent his life studying. The painful gap between how intelligent minds experience the world and how everyone else does. You've probably noticed this your entire life, but never had words for it. The way conversations that excite others bore you to death. The way most people's concerns feel trivial while your thoughts go places they can't follow. The way you'd rather be alone than pretend to care about topics that mean nothing. And you've been told this is your problem, that you need to be more social, more relatable, less intense. But what if the problem isn't you? Schopenhauer saw this pattern everywhere. He watched brilliant minds struggle in social situations, not because they lacked social skills, but because they existed on a completely different wavelength. He saw them try to connect, try to fit in, try to find their people. And he realized something most never understand. Intelligence doesn't just change what you think, it changes who you can connect with. And the higher your intelligence, the smaller that pool becomes. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore why intelligent people naturally end up with fewer friends. We're going to examine what Schopenhauer called the law of mental solitude, the mathematical reality that as your intelligence increases, the number of people who can genuinely understand you decreases. And if you've spent your life feeling alienated, feeling like something's wrong with you for not having more friends, then support this work with a like and subscribe. Because what we're about to uncover will finally explain what you've always felt but couldn't articulate. This isn't about being superior. It's about understanding why certain experiences others take for granted feel impossible for you. Why friendship requires more than proximity. Why quality beats quantity every time. Get ready, because this changes how you see your entire social life. Schopenhauer wrote about what he called intellectual inequality. Not a moral judgment, but a psychological fact. People exist at different levels of mental complexity. And here's what most miss. This isn't just about education or knowledge. It's about how deeply you process reality, how many layers you see, how much nuance you detect, how complex your internal world actually is. Think about how you experience a simple conversation. Someone mentions a topic. While they're discussing surface-level observations, your mind has already gone 3 layers deeper. You're seeing implications they don't see, making connections they can't make, questioning assumptions they don't know they have. And by the time you want to contribute, the conversation has moved on. Because you're not just slower, you're operating in a different dimension entirely. This is what Schopenhauer meant by intellectual inequality. It's not that you're better, it's that you're different. Your consciousness processes information at a level of complexity that most people's consciousness simply doesn't reach. Like having color vision in a world where most people see in black and white. You're not superior for seeing color. You just see something they literally cannot perceive. And here's where it gets isolating. You cannot share what others cannot perceive. You can't have a conversation about nuance with someone who only sees surfaces. You can't discuss implications with someone who only sees facts. You can't explore complexity with someone whose mind stops at simplicity. The gap isn't bridgeable through effort. It's structural. Most people think friendship is about shared interests. You both like coffee, movies, sports, so you're friends. But for intelligent minds, shared interests mean nothing without shared depth. You can both love philosophy, but if they're satisfied with surface-level understanding while you need to excavate every assumption, you're not actually connecting. You're just lonely together. Schopenhauer understood this as the tragedy of intelligence. The more you're capable of thinking, the fewer people you're capable of connecting with. Not because you're picky, but because genuine connection requires resonance. and resonance requires operating on the same frequency. When you're broadcasting in high definition, while everyone around you receives in standard definition, connection becomes mathematically improbable. If you're recognizing yourself in this, if this explains years of failed friendships and uncomfortable social situations, write it down. Not to complain, but to finally understand. You're not broken for having few friends. You're intelligent, and intelligence has a price. Here's where it gets personal. The exhaustion that comes from translating yourself. Every social interaction requires you to dumb yourself down, simplify your thoughts, remove the nuance, speak in approximations of what you actually mean, because saying what you actually think would either confuse them or make them uncomfortable. And this translation work is utterly exhausting. Schopenhauer wrote that intelligent people feel like they're speaking a foreign language even in their native tongue. Because you're not just exchanging words, you're trying to communicate complex ideas to people whose minds don't naturally go to those places. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's colorblind. You can use all the right words, but the experience itself is non-transferable. Think about the last time you tried to explain something you found fascinating. You could see it so clearly. The patterns, the implications, the deeper meaning. But as you started talking, you watched their eyes glaze over. They nodded politely. They said, "Interesting." But you could tell they didn't get it. Not because they're stupid, but because their minds simply don't process at that level of complexity. And you felt that familiar sinking feeling. Alone again, even in conversation. So you learn to self-censor. You learn what topics are safe, what depth is acceptable, what level of complexity people can handle before they check out. You learn to perform a simpler version of yourself, to have conversations that satisfy others while leaving you completely unstimulated. And you call this being social, mature, well-adjusted. But Schopenhauer would call it slow suffocation, the truly brutal part. Most people don't even notice you're translating. They think they're having real conversations with the real you. They have no idea they're interacting with a simplified version you created specifically. They think they know you. They call you their friend. But they've never met the actual you, because the actual you speaks a language they don't understand. And this creates what Schopenhauer called the prison of intelligence. You're surrounded by people, but completely alone. You're having conversations, but never saying what you actually think. You're called a friend, but never truly known. Because to be known requires being understood. And to be understood requires someone who can comprehend the language your mind naturally speaks. Notice the pattern emerging here, the quality paradox. Most people measure friendship by quantity. How many friends do you have? How big is your social circle? How often do you go out? But intelligent minds don't work this way. For you, one person who genuinely understands you is worth more than 100 who don't. One real conversation is more nourishing than 1,000 shallow ones. Schopenhauer understood this clearly. He wrote that inferior minds find satisfaction in the common, while superior minds require the rare, not because you're snobby, but because your consciousness has specific needs. Like having sophisticated taste in food. You're not pretentious for not enjoying fast food. Your palate just requires more complexity to feel satisfied. Same with your mind. Most people can connect with almost anyone. Throw them in a room with strangers, and they'll find common ground, make small talk, feel satisfied. But for you, most people feel like white noise. Conversations feel empty. Interactions feel pointless. Not because you're antisocial, but because your mind requires substance to engage. And substance is rare. This is why you have few friends. Not because you can't make friends, but because most potential friendships feel worse than being alone. Because shallow connection is depleting. Because performing normalcy drains you. Because settling for surface-level relationships when your mind craves depth feels like betrayal of who you actually are. And here's what most people don't understand. You're not lonely because you lack friends. You're lonely because you lack compatible minds. Throwing you into more social situations doesn't help. It just creates more opportunities for you to feel alone in crowds. What you need isn't more people. It's the right people. And those people are mathematically rare. Schopenhauer calculated this. If intelligence follows a bell curve and genuine connection requires similar levels of complexity, then the smarter you are, the fewer compatible minds exist, not as judgment, as mathematics. If you're 3 standard deviations above average, only about 0.1% of people can genuinely connect with you. That's 1 person in 1,000. No wonder you feel alone. This one hits different. The preference for solitude that others misunderstand. You don't hate people. You just prefer your own company to most people's company. And society treats this like a disorder, like something that needs fixing. But Schopenhauer would say it's the most rational response to your reality. Here's what he understood. For intelligent minds, solitude isn't isolation. It's freedom. Freedom from performing. Freedom from translating. Freedom from the exhausting work of dumbing yourself down so others can tolerate you. In solitude, you can finally think at full capacity. You can explore ideas without simplifying them. You can be yourself without apologizing for it. Most people fear solitude because when they're alone with a mind that bores them. Their internal world isn't rich enough to keep them engaged. So they need external stimulation. They need constant social input. They need others to fill the void. But your internal world is complex enough to sustain you, rich enough to fascinate you, deep enough that you could spend years exploring it. This is why you choose books over parties, ideas over gossip, depth over breadth. Not because you're antisocial, but because your mind is stimulated more by complexity than by socializing. A great book gives you more than most conversations ever could. A powerful idea engages you more than small talk ever will. Your own thoughts are often more interesting than other people's company. And here's the freedom in this. Once you accept that you prefer quality over quantity, that solitude beats shallow socializing, that your own company is often the best company, you stop feeling guilty. You stop forcing yourself to attend events that drain you. You stop maintaining friendships that don't nourish you. You become selective, intentional, sovereign over your own time and energy. Schopenhauer wrote that the mind is its own place. For most people, that place is uncomfortable, so they escape it through constant socializing. But for intelligent minds, that place is rich, fascinating, endlessly explorable. You don't need to escape it. You need to protect it, to guard it from the constant demands of a world that wants you to be more accessible, more available, more like everyone else. Pay attention to this, the recognition gap. Even when you find someone intelligent, there's another barrier. They need to be intelligent in ways that overlap with your intelligence. Someone brilliant in mathematics might bore you if you're brilliant in philosophy. Someone deep in emotions might frustrate you if you're deep in logic. Intelligence isn't one-dimensional. Schopenhauer understood this as the specificity problem. Not only do you need someone intelligent, you need someone whose intelligence resonates with yours, whose questions match your questions, whose curiosities align with your curiosities, whose depth exists in domains you care about. And that specificity makes compatible minds even rarer than intelligence alone would suggest. Think about how many times you've met someone smart and still felt lonely. They can keep up intellectually, but they care about different things. They ask different questions. They find meaning in places you find emptiness. You're both deep, but your depths don't intersect. So you're still alone, just with someone who's also alone in a different way. This is why intelligent people often surprise others with their friend choices. From the outside, it makes no sense. You're brilliant. Why are you friends with someone so different? But you understand something others don't. The friendship isn't about similarity. It's about resonance. Something in their mind vibrates at a frequency yours recognize. And that resonance, rare as it is, matters more than any surface-level compatibility. And here's what Schopenhauer would say. Stop looking for people like you. Look for people whose unlikeness complements your complexity, who challenge you in ways that make you more yourself, not less, who understand your language even when speaking their own dialect. Those people are your real friends. And if you only find 2 or 3 in a lifetime, you're luckier than most. Now we arrive at what Schopenhauer called the paradox of intelligent friendship. The people most capable of deep connection are the least likely to pursue it aggressively, because you've been burned too many times. You've opened up only to realize they couldn't follow. You've shared your real thoughts only to watch them recoil. You've tried to connect only to discover the gap was unbridgeable. So you become cautious, guarded. You don't offer depth casually anymore. You test first. Drop hints. See if they pick up on nuance. Watch how they respond to complexity. And most people fail the test without knowing they're being tested. They give surface answers to deep questions. They deflect with humor when you probe beneath appearances. They prove, again and again, that they can't go where your mind naturally goes. This creates what Schopenhauer called the aristocracy of the intellect. Not better than others, but fundamentally separate, operating in a different realm. And the higher you go, the more rarefied the air becomes, the more alone you are, not because you want to be, but because that's the mathematical reality of occupying mental spaces few others can access. Here's the brutal truth. You will have few friends your entire life, not because you're failing at friendship, but because you're succeeding at authenticity, because you refuse to settle for shallow connection, because you'd rather be alone than pretend, because you understand that real friendship requires genuine understanding, and genuine understanding requires compatible consciousness, and most people will never understand this. They'll say you're too picky, too isolated, too antisocial. They'll try to fix you to make you more social, more normal. They won't realize that you're not broken, you're just rare. And rare things don't connect easily with common things, not because of arrogance, but because of incompatibility. Schopenhauer asked a powerful question. Would you rather have 100 acquaintances who don't understand you, or one friend who does? For most people, quantity feels like connection. But for intelligent minds, only quality registers as real. 1,000 shallow friendships equals 0 genuine connection. But one real friendship equals infinity. So here we are at the choice. You can keep trying to make yourself more palatable. Keep simplifying yourself. Keep maintaining friendships that don't satisfy. Keep attending social events that drain you. Keep pretending that quantity equals connection. The world will reward you for this. You'll seem well-adjusted, normal, socially successful. Or you can accept what Schopenhauer called the law of mental solitude. Accept that your intelligence naturally limits your social circle. Accept that quality beats quantity every time. Accept that being understood matters more than being popular. Accept that few friends is the natural result of refusing to settle, and find peace in that acceptance. Because here's what Schopenhauer knew. The intelligent person with 2 real friends is infinitely richer than the average person with 200 acquaintances. One genuine connection feeds your soul more than 1,000 performed friendships ever could. One person who understands your language is worth more than a crowd who only hears noise when you speak. So I want to ask you directly, how many of your current friendships are real? How many people actually understand you versus knowing the simplified version you perform? How much of your social life is nourishing versus depleting? And more importantly, what would happen if you let the shallow friendships fall away? If you stopped performing accessibility? If you became as selective as your intelligence naturally demands? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations. Invitations to stop feeling guilty for having few friends. To stop measuring your worth by your social circle size. To stop settling for shallow connection because it's available. To finally honor the truth that quality beats quantity. That solitude beats fake friendship. That being rare means connecting rarely. If this message resonated, if you finally feel validated for having few friends instead of judged for it, if you're ready to stop apologizing for your selectivity and start honoring it, then you've found your rare few. This isn't just content. It's a gathering of minds that understand what it's like to be intelligent in a world that celebrates accessibility over depth. Subscribe if you're ready for more philosophy that validates your solitude. More truth that says few friends is success, not failure. More content that honors quality over quantity in every aspect of life. This is for the intellectually lonely, the depth seekers, the ones who'd rather have one real friend than 100 fake ones. Share your experience in the comments. Tell us about the last time someone truly understood you. Connect with others who know that rarity is the price of intelligence. Because together, even in small numbers, we create the depth that the world refuses to provide.